This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Broadcasting live from AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, as well as in the evening, I should say, WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. It's the Matt McNeil Show for your Wednesday. Jeff Stein joining us here in a little bit. We'll talk about the deliberations. I'll get to all that stuff a little bit later on. Brett is in with us today. Hello, Brett. How are we?
All right. How about you?
All right. I mean, how concerned should I be about the turkey flock outside the station door here?
We'll get you some weapons on the way out.
If you don't know, in the Twin Cities, the wild turkeys have become the most vicious street gang we have. You do not mess with them. They will cut you. They will take you out. And we've had a flock of them take residence around our radio station. We also had a turtle trying to break in the other day. You know, we got to have a staff meeting about this. If the turtles are trying to break in, I think we've got some issues. I mean, obviously some lethargic issues, but still, I mean, the turtles, man, the turtles are trying to break into the station at this point.
I know exactly. Hopefully, they're not ninjas too.
He was a pretty slow ninja. I think it was more of the Tai Chi thing going on, slow movements, deliberate. We had garter snakes. We have more garter snakes pound for pound than any other radio station in the country here. We need St. Patrick to swing on by. It is mutual freaking of Omaha in this place, man.
There's all sorts of wildlife. Yeah, I don't know which one we're missing.
I have zero doubt there's coyotes around here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a given, I think.
Well, I see them on those Acme roller skates, and I'm like, that's a low-quality roller skate. I mean, you need a better quality roller skate if you're going to really, do that.
I think the turkeys took their territory away, so there might be a little gang battle at some point between the turkeys and the coyotes.
I don't want to be in the middle of this. I mean, okay, I don't mind nature shows. I love going to the national parks. Hey, look, wildlife. I don't want to do this in the suburbs. All right? It's just me. I don't want to walk out the door and here comes an eagle to take me away to its nest. I mean, I don't want that. Nature is great and all until it starts getting a little bit, pushy. Now, of course, actually, I love the fact that we live around nature. It's a nice element to it. So 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. So, like I said, I'm going to get into the deliberations. There's only been one note thing. Brett, do me a favor. Keep an eye on during the show if they do come back with a verdict. I mean, they got 34 charges to go through. Even if they just read them out one by one, might they get through today? It depends on how quick. Yep, guilty. All right, next one. Yep, guilty. They could. They've only asked for one, up to this point, one clarification on 3 bits of David Pecker's testimony and 1 bit of Michael Cohen's testimony. And the fact that that's on Pecker, I think that doesn't bode well for Trump. Because if they're focusing only on Cohen, yeah, but Pecker was his buddy at the National Enquirer. So we'll have to see how all this goes today. But needless to say, it's breaking news. We'll get, like I said, we'll talk to Stein about it, when he joins us here in about a little more than 20 plus minutes. So I want to. Sometimes you see a meme and it just resonates. You know what I mean? And there is, of course, all these conservatives that run around out there and try to make the argument, oh, well, rapists are pretending to be transgender and then raping people. And that's that basically, dismissing the transgender population by these ugly, attacks, which basically have very little merit. And someone made this point, and I kudos to the individual. Why would rapists bother to pretend to be trans in a culture that treats rapists better than trans women? And it's like, wow. When I read that, I was like, holy cow. That is so spot on. That's nuts. Because it's true. It's true. It's true. And I know that there's conservatives out there, oh gosh, you guys treat rapists far better than transgender people. You treat, depending on what state you're in, you treat rapists better than women. And that's a fact. I want to go back to, because this, when I saw this, it reminded me of the story which I went nuclear on at the beginning of this year. And it was a study conducted by Dr. Samuel Dinkman, Kerry White, and David Himmelstein, examining the data from the FBI, CDC, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics. The research team narrowed its study to 14 states that outlawed abortion after the U.S. Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, which overturned the court's prior decision on Roe v. Wade. So it basically looked at only the 14 states that immediately outlawed abortion, period. According to the study, now this is in Texas. This got a lot of traction in Texas, but it's everywhere. 26,313 rape-related pregnancies occurred in Texas during the 16 months after the state legislature banned abortion. The 26,303 pregnancies in Texas in 16 months, specifically due to rape. Including Texas, an estimated 519,981 rapes of women aged 15 to 45 occurred in the banned states, the 14 states. So I want to make sure we understand. 519,981 rapes happened in 14 states alone in 16 months. 14 states, 16 months, 519,981 rapes. In Texas alone, remember when they're saying we're going to outlaw abortion, and they said, well, what about rape victims? We're going to take care and make sure rape never happens. You know how many? 211,919 rapes in Texas alone. That's called not making it illegal. An estimated 64,565 pregnancies occurred due to rape in those 14 states alone in the 16 months. Women are under assault in this country, and in many of those states, there are laws that protect the rapist's right to being a parent for that child. Repeat that, because, yeah, that's disgusting, isn't it? That not only can you rape this woman, but then you have paternal decisions you can make over the child you just raped that woman that was forced to carry that child to term. The rapist is allowed to force themselves into their victims' lives forever. I'll stand by the point I made. Why would rapists try to appear transgender when we treat transgender people far worse than we treat rapists? And the ugly truth is that rapists get treated better than the victims of their rape. This is, and by the way, if there were 519,000 victims of gunshot deaths in this country in 16 months overall, not just in 14 states. So you could only imagine that number is probably 3 times higher than it's being reported in these states. Those other states, they don't necessarily have a no abortion standard, and so are not forcing the rape victims to carry the rapist baby to term. But if you just had 519,000 deaths by gunshot in this country, even the freaking NRA at that point would say this is unsustainable as a society. We can't have this anymore. Even the NRA would say, no, that's too many deaths. We have to start regulating this because we're going to start going through a massive portion of the population unless things turn around. Yet we have that. And this number came out in January. By the way, this number came out in January of this year. And nobody is outraged by this. I mean, I'm outraged. If I'm a woman, if I was a woman, I would feel like I am definitively under attack in this country. Because not only are rapes insanely common happening across this country, but on top of it, you have many states where the rights of the rapist supersede your right as the victim. Unbelievable. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. We've been talking here on the show for the last few days about the 4th anniversary of the police murdering George Floyd in the street and then the subsequent uprising that happened in the city afterwards of Minneapolis-St. Paul. We've also talked about a group called the Goon Squad. This was a group of Mississippi sheriff's deputies. And how they basically got caught because as they were torturing 2 black men, they accidentally they intentionally shot the guy. And then they basically tried to make up a story. What they didn't know, there were cameras throughout the house showing them basically setting this all up. All of them, by the way, have been found guilty and are serving jail time now, but it's clearly not enough. This is from, I think it's Mississippi Today and the New York Times. Between vacation photos and cookout invitations posted on their private thread net, a group of Mississippi sheriff's deputies who called themselves the Goon Squad traded pictures of rotting corpses and joked about rape and shocking people with tasers. They did it all in front of their supervisor, who often joined in the banter. The encrypted WhatsApp chat group obtained by the New York Times and Mississippi Today provides a years-long record of the day-to-day conversations of a patrol unit involved in terrorizing residents across central Mississippi County for a generation. The Goon Squad came to national attention last year after Rankin County Sheriff's deputies tortured 2 black men at their home and shot one of them in the face, nearly killing him. 6 officers, including 3 from the Goon Squad shift, pled guilty and are sentenced to federal prison in March. An investigation by the Times and Mississippi Today last fall revealed that nearly 24 residents experienced similar brutality when Rankin deputies burst into their homes looking for illegal drugs. Most of the deputies in the chat have not been charged, and some have not been accused of violence or other illegal behavior. Several deputies said their comments were jokes and denied doing anything illegal. At least 9 still work in that current sheriff's department. I'm going to go through the rest of this story here when we come back, but I want to say this right now. I have a bad feeling that what happened in Minneapolis, is still going on in a lot of police departments and sheriff's offices across the country. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Stick like toffee, sip like coffee, wake up, change your mind and drop me love to hate me crazy, shady, spit me out like hot wasabi, lick me up, I'm
It's the Matt McNeil Show once again here on your Wednesday. Good to have you with us. 952-946-6205. Going back to the WhatsApp thread that now has been released to Mississippi Today and the New York Times from the Goon Squad, the sheriff's department down in Mississippi. The thread, the text thread, the contents of which have not been previously been reported, shows that for years, the deputies chattered routinely about ways to humiliate and brutalize criminal suspects. Now, by the way, I'm just going to make the point out that I think needs to be made. The sheriff himself, I had no idea. You're a complete dumbass then, because you clearly had to have had an idea. I mean, this was so prevalent within your department that it was clear that you and everyone else in that sheriff's department knew exactly what was going on. This is like in Minneapolis when you had, the 6th precinct in Minneapolis decided to put up a racist Christmas tree. A racist Christmas tree. And they thought it was hilarious until someone reported it, and it was like, well, we had no idea. You mean the Christmas tree you all walked past every day for 3 weeks? Come on. You know, I know you guys don't respect the people of Minneapolis, but we're not that stupid. Okay? We know you guys were all on board with it, and then it got out, and all of a sudden it was, oh, now we're upset. No, they all knew this stuff was going on. And it leads you to think that for years, well, it's Mississippi. I don't think this is a real stretch. This it's rare, though, we get the view that it's validated, that this mistreatment of the people of this community was basic standard operating procedure for this sheriff's department. Amid mundane messages about time cards and vacation days, the deputies delighted in the violence they had witnessed and goaded one another to assault and shame people struggling with addiction and accused of crimes. They punctuated the chat with racist comments about Mexicans and memes denigrating women as sex objects, all in view of more than a dozen deputies who were part of the same unit and received the same group text. And not a single one of them had a problem with it. In November of 2019, the same year the department came under review for 3 fatal shootings that involved the Goon Squad members, the deputies discussed turning their work into a game, 1 point for every arrest. Deputy Cody Grogan asked the group how many points he would get if he shot somebody. Depends on if they die or not, replied Lieutenant Jeffrey Middleton, the shift supervisor. They'll die, Deputy Luke Stickman wrote. Mr. Gogan, who no longer works at the department, said in an interview, his text messages were absolutely all jokes. Oh, yes. You're just like a big old racist comedian, aren't you? A big old racist comedian? All jokes. Laughing about shooting people as a cop. Once again, they just think we're stupid. They just think we're all stupid. You don't get it. We were just joking when we were saying in a state that has systemic racist problems with its police department that we were going to just randomly shoot black people. Yeah. Deputies in the chat also discussed taking nude pictures of women they had arrested. They made plans to rough up people they disliked or suspected of crimes. They urged one another to shock people's private parts with tasers. One shared a video of a deputy going to the bathroom on somebody's bed. When deputies encountered people who had died by suicide, homicide, or car crash, they sometimes shared pictures of the bodies, compared states of composition, and joked they should have sex with them. $5 if you take a selfie with him and your arm around him, said Deputy Cook wrote. Mr. Cook, who no longer works for the law enforcement, said that while he was not proud of his text, it's common for police officers to exchange off-color jokes about their work. We say dead bodies all the time. That's kind of how we deal with this stuff. I want to remind you, that's somebody's child. That's somebody's spouse. That's somebody's loved one. You're joking about, you bigoted jackasses. Make sure, and please, someone make sure the audio of this gets down to the Rankin County Sheriff's Department. What a horrible group of people. All of you are just plain human trash. All of you, Sheriff, everyone down. Every single one of you. A disgrace. And the fact is, I shouldn't be just the one out here ripping on you. Every police department in this country should have a press release out today condemning this police department. And nope, we can't do that. Yeah, thin blue line, man. Thin blue line. This is what you consider quality police work? This? He also distanced himself from his colleagues accused of torturing people. Had I known they were doing stuff like that, I probably would have made jokes like that, said Mr. Cook. You knew. Come on. You knew. I highly doubt that you didn't know. It would be clear. They were doing this on a group chat on WhatsApp. Deputy Cotton, who still works for the department, said he and his colleagues traded pictures of dead people out of curiosity. He didn't share them outside their chat group. Oh, good. A moral standard. It's stuff that you just see on the job. It's not against the law. I didn't make any vulgar comments about it. No, you just took pictures of someone's dead relative and loved one and shared it in a mocking manner. Raskin County Sheriff Brian Bailey says he was not aware of the allegations of the violence against his deputies over the years, and he did not know about the Goon Squad moniker. I didn't even realize they called themselves that until last week. He's a liar. God, I have zero doubt he's lying. Zero doubt. The chat shows that deputies working under Lieutenant Middleton began calling themselves the Goon Squad as far back as 2019. More than a dozen men, everyone who is assigned to the shift, participated in the chat, including Lieutenant Middleton, who reported directly to the sheriff. The violent acts that the deputies discussed were similar to those reported by dozens of residents interviewed last year by the Times and Mississippi Today. Those residents said they experienced or witnessed raids in which deputies restrained suspects or drove them to remote locations, then beat them, threatened to kill them, and shocked them with tasers to the face and genitals. Many said the assaults had been directed by the department's then chief investigator, Brent McAlpin. whom federal prosecutors identified as the ringleader of the goon squad during his sentencing in March. In 2020, the deputies texted about what to do with the man they suspected being involved in a hit-and-run chase. Deputy Grogan offered a quote he attributed to the chief investigator. "Nothing scares a man like kidnapping," and said Brett McAlpin. Deputy Grogan wrote, I'm down to make some bad choices," said Deputy Dustin Smith. The deputies then joked about killing the man and burying him on Deputy Grogan's property. Lieutenant Middleton suggested they dump the body near Jackson, Mississippi. They'll never solve it. Ha, 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 a joke. In an interview, wow, Mr. Grogan called his text in the group chat a poor decision and said, "Never kidnapped anybody and I never shot anybody." Wow. Who here doesn't believe that guy? Deputy Smith declined to comment because he's a coward. Deputy Smith is a coward. No one in the group, including the highest-ranking members, raised concerns in the chat about what was being said. In a 2020 text messages, 2 deputies asked Lieutenant Middleton if they should beat a man they believed had exposed himself to women at a local gas station. "That's just fine. Justify it. Good in your report," said Lieutenant. Yeah. I would be remiss if I did not say that I would probably imagine there is at least 200 police and or sheriff's departments in this country operating under the same ugliness that the Rankin County Sheriff's Department was. Absolutely, without a doubt in my mind. And like I said, the fact that the police departments themselves cannot come on out here and condemn this because thin blue line, Matt, thin blue line. Dude, I'm sorry. A person with integrity would be out there condemning this today and basically saying that's not quality police work. We'll take a break, come back. Stein when we do return.
Dark shadows follow me. Jeff. J-E-F-F, Jeff. J-E-F-F, Jeff. J-E-F-F, Jeff.
Jeff Stein's our national and presidential expert, noted author. You can find his books at your favorite bookstore. Also, you can find the Iowa Business Report, the Iowa Politics Report, coming to us from his flagship station, KXEL Cedar Falls, Waterloo, where Jeff is currently serving time. Hey, Jeff.
And we're flying our appeal to heaven flag upside down.
Oh, there you go. We'll get to him. We'll get to, Loverboy there.
You said flagship, so I went there.
We'll get to Loverboy in a sec.
Yeah.
All right. So we have to start with this because you and I have talked about that Trump has not had the best lawyers. So today... The fact that you said that while snickering is the setup for the audience. So you're in court today. Yeah. You are the judge is giving his instructions to the jury on the case, and Alina Habba is sitting there behind Trump in the chairs. Now, once again, you're not supposed to use your phone in the courtroom, but the judge has allowed the numerous entourage of Trump fans to use their phones and be there. Media. And media. And some of the media is for sure. Yes. Yeah. But there's a difference between Eric and some representative from Wyoming or something like that, and a lawyer who supposedly or does have courtroom experience who didn't realize as she was looking at her phone that her volume was up. And as he's giving instructions to the jury, she starts playing a video in court, which got a fairly stern look from the judge. But I said to myself, how bad of a lawyer do you have to be that if you're going to be so blatantly, it's not the House reps or Eric or Don Jr. or something. It's a lawyer who doesn't realize, there looks like a funny TikTok video I should see as I'm in court.
It used to be that we said that the O.J. Simpson criminal case was the best example of the worst trial ever. I stand corrected. This is the best example of the worst trial ever because, again, I go back to the fact, if you had written this, if Matt McNeil sat there with his Smith Corona typewriter and a couple of sheets of carbon paper and tapped out a novel in the basement of his home, And if he put this stuff in that novel, the publisher would reject it and say, too fanciful.
Yes.
Nobody's going to believe any of
You're
this.
exaggerating way too much.
There's no way a lawyer would be watching a video with the volume up. Yeah. I mean, just up and down the line. It's a clown car on all sides. And I just don't know what the lasting value is going to be of it, other than, again, the best example of the worst case.
Yesterday's closing arguments, pretty standard stuff. I mean, obviously the Trump defense is all Michael Cohen. You know, the rest of it is just circumstantial evidence. I did like how the prosecutor laid out. I mean, it was 5 hours, but I mean, they kept looking at the jury and say, "Are you okay?" And they were all, yes. I mean, multiple times they said, "Keep going." But
they're hostages, man. What are they gonna say?
But they
want their crumb of bread and their sip of water.
They basically started at, running the entire case. Well, he started by basically addressing a lot of the defense's comments about Cohen, and then basically started at the very beginning of their case. Now that they've showed all the evidence and went point by point by point, and it took 5 hours. But, the people that were watching the trial, they said, it's not that the Trump lawyers could do any better than this, but it was a much more concise storytelling from the prosecutor side, as opposed to what the defense team really only the option they had, which is Cohen bad, Cohen bad, Cohen bad.
Well, if you're the prosecutor in any case, it's your narrative. It's your story. You have the burden of proof. That's why I have never heard of the prosecution going second. They always go first, and then the defense, and then the prosecution gets another shot. They always get the last word. I've never heard of them not getting the first word, but regardless of that, it's the prosecution's case. It's the prosecution's narrative. And so from the defense standpoint, any defense, you're most of the time you're waving your arms and going, nuh-uh, because that's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm defending you on, grand hypocrisy or some charge that they make up, I don't know. I was going to say larceny, but there is one, so I didn't want to impugn
Panda
you.
smuggling.
Don't forget the smuggling. I especially like the smuggling. I'm going to say, nuh-uh, wasn't him. That was that guy, Patrick. And, that's the defense.
Reasonable
right?
doubt. Reasonable doubt is generally in a kind of a perfect world. I'll say it like this. What it does is it forces a prosecution to bring all the evidence and prove their case without a doubt, versus the ability to say, well, did this really happen? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's the whole concept.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing is you're defending. What's your best defense? Discredit their key witness.
Yeah.
And now I did not, obviously I was not in the courtroom. I did not follow tweet by tweet as people who had their volume down on their phones were telling us about it. If you're the prosecution, and I think they would have acknowledged this from the start, this is a nuanced case. This is not a smash and grab burglary from a jewelry store that's on a camera. This is a nuanced case. The defense is saying you can't trust that bad guy, Michael Cohen. They're simplifying the case because if you're the defense and you can get the jury to simply discredit or to feel that witness is discredited, that's your best shot. But the prosecution has to lay out this nuanced narrative that is not as easy to follow. Even those who are proponents of the case admit it's not easy to follow.
One of the things I found to be interesting in the jury instructions today, because of the 34 charges, some charges do not need a unanimous jury, but there were, I think it's one of them definitely needs a unanimous jury, correct? Am I not mistaken?
This thing is a train wreck. I cannot figure out how you have pools of 4 jurors to decide certain things and not others, but this judge is saying you do not need to have a unanimous.
But he actually came on back. There was one of the latter charges, and I think it has to do with the conspiracy. That has to be a unanimous decision. So there, because there are a lot of
linchpin. That's a fundamental linchpin to the whole felony aspect.
And one of the things that's going to happen is I don't think it's unreasonable that Trump is going to be found guilty of some of these things and not all of them. And I think that that's kind of the case. But I think that, there's a lot of people on the conservative side that it's like, all he needs is 4 jurors and that's it. No, there are some of the charges that that expose a lower threshold, but the main charges still require a unanimous jury, correct?
Yeah. And again, you made an excellent point. There are what, 34, 712 charges, whatever there are.
It's a short week for Trump.
You start on Tuesday and let's get out by the weekend. Forget that it's Trump. Just think of it as any criminal case. If you have 36 whatever charges, if it's going bad for the prosecution, having that many charges hurts you because it seems like you're piling on. If it's going very good for the prosecution, then the chance of an all or nothing, is increased in terms of it being found guilty of everything. It's kind of like when they start reading verdicts and it's guilty, guilty, guilty. You're like, oh, settle back, because it's going to be, they're going to run the table. What you really could see in this, and again, trying to analyze a jury is nobody. The only person who halfway knew was Dr. Phil, and look what he does for a living these days. Much better living than you or I combined. But a lot of times they split the difference, and this is why a Wednesday beginning of deliberations is interesting. You really think they want to come back Monday?
Wow.
If they have not found, I'm looking at Friday afternoon. If it's early Friday afternoon and they don't have a decision, you're going to see the art of compromise. That's the art of the deal, my friend.
Yeah.
That's when that's going to come in, because it's going to be, what can we all live with, and just get the blazes out of here.
So basically, all right. So what has happened is, since today, the jury is dismissed. They're planning on coming back tomorrow, it sounds like. The first testimony they wanted to read back there was one quote from Cohen, but it was 3 quotes from David Pecker, the National Enquirer guy, who is Trump's buddy. And the first thing I think about with that is, once again, we talk about the defense is closing. Just focus on Cohen. The fact that all of a sudden they're bringing in his buddy, who, once again, Hope Hicks, a lot of people that are allies of him testified against him in this case. If they're really starting to go into these other statements and the other evidence, that's where my guess would be. And once again, pure hypothetical, but you're guessing about the fact that it is looking, they are looking beyond Michael Cohen at that point.
It's like they're going in chronological order, witness by witness. Mm-hmm. And that's not unheard of.
No,
if you're the jury, right? A quick verdict. If they would have come back with a verdict today, without even knowing what it is, I would have said to you, that's not a just verdict. Either way, doesn't matter. That's too quick to take this many weeks with that much testimony and this much nuance. The fact that it's like, well, what was that about David Pecker? And I'll talk about this other one against, like, wow, you guys are going chapter and verse down the list. And that's a very methodical way to go. Usually what happens in a jury is they just kind of, and I don't think you could do it in a case with 3 dozen charges, but usually it's like, okay, let's just quick show of hands. How many think we're guilty here? How many think we're not guilty? You get a pretty good sense of the room. The fact that they are, in essence, starting from day one of testimony and working their way through, perhaps, that suggests that they're not all of the same mind to start with, I guess is the way I'd phrase it.
I think a lot of it comes down to the head juror and the jurist, who is basically, if he basically sets the thing, we're going to just do, once again, complicated case, 34 charges, lots of testimony to go through. We're going to take, case number 1, charge number 1. All right, done. Charge number 2. Okay, we got some questions about this. I'm going to presume that that's the case. I would say this. I agree with you. I think there's just too much that, the idea that there had been a guilty or a not guilty verdict today would have just, that doesn't make any sense. I will say this: if by the end of day tomorrow, your thoughts on this, if by the end of day tomorrow, if there's a guilty verdict or a not guilty verdict, that it was pretty unanimous from the get-go that they probably did what you suggested. They did at the start of the deliberations. Okay, most of us, let's raise our hand. Who thinks this is all going to go one way or the other? And that they're just dotting I's and crossing T's for today and the part of the day tomorrow.
Oh, you mean the idea of, Okay, we all know what we're going to do, but we got to make it look good.
Well, basically, to make sure we dot I's and cross T's. Yes.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, again, forget that it's Trump. Pretend it's State versus McNeil, and everybody looks around the table and goes, "He's railroaded. It's not fair. He is not guilty." Okay, well, how long do you think we should go before we tell him that?
Well,
And,
I think most jurors would say, okay, we all kind of agree on this, but let's go through
Exactly.
each case
No,
here,
you're
each
right.
charge. And okay, because like I said, I think some of these cases, I'm having a hard time believing they're not going to find for Trump. Like the check, the fact that he has a check that he signed that basically is there. I mean, that's a pretty strong bit of evidence.
Well, but they never deny that there were payments. See, that's the thing again. It's like, what does the check mean? Now, I will tell you, I thought about this today knowing that you and I would talk. And I was thinking back in my limited time, 10 years, whatever, as a defense attorney, the courthouse was across the street, okay, from the office.
Yeah.
There was a case where the jury went in. I stopped at the clerk's office to file some other paperwork. I went back to the office. I did not even get through the stack of little pink phone messages, because that shows you how long ago it was. And they called from the courthouse and said, the jury is back. That was not a happy day. I mean, for crying out loud, they hadn't poured coffee. It was that open and shut of case, and we were not on the prevailing side. Justice was probably served, but I'm just saying we got served. So, I mean, it can happen, but only, again, in a simplistic case, because you can't take the jury seriously otherwise. You're right.
Exactly. And so, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think that if it happens by the end of the day tomorrow or by the beginning of Friday, it was one side or the other made a pretty good case. And because I think that even if you're going through 34 charges, that's basically you're kind of you're speed dating through that sucker there for sure. By the way,
I think you're speed dating if you're done tomorrow. I think if you get into Friday, all right, it's a little more valid.
They had to wake up Trump when the jury left, by the way. They had to wake him up again. We got to come back. It's Flag Talk with Jeff Stein when we do return. 952-946-6205. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. So I'm going to read this. This is Sam Alito today saying that he will not recuse himself from cases, just throwing his wife under the bus and then picking her up and chucking her under another bus. My wife is fond of flying flags. I am not, Alito wrote. My wife is solely responsible for having flagpoles up at our residence, and our vacation home has flown a wide variety of flags over the years. In addition to the American flag, she has thrown other patriotic flags. Well, we don't care about the patriotic flags. It's the we love insurrectionist flags that she has a bad habit of putting up. First of all, let's just be honest. Sam Alito thinks we're all stupid. I mean, clearly, he doesn't have any other defense outside of, I have no idea. Who's this woman? What am I doing here? Who
is this woman? I thought you were going to say he's clearly anti-flag.
Well, I think, it's clear, the fact that he seems to, despise them with but yet someone keeps putting him up around him all the time. I mean, he sounds like a delightful neighbor.
Now you and I talked about this a bit last week.
Yes.
When you are a member of the judiciary, I don't care what level, you hold yourself to a different standard. Yeah. Now, again, there are some jurisdictions where you vote for a judge, popular election. They are listed as Republicans or Democrats, but you have many that follow it's known as the Missouri plan, where it's an independent, nonpartisan judiciary. The U.S. Supreme Court is one of those. You don't get elected to it. You're supposed to leave the R&D at the door, which means even if you believe a certain way, like I want to show my neighbor, and you just don't do it, period. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about your home. I can guess. But if your wife put up a flag and you didn't like it, would you say, honey, what's that?
Garfield, what the hell? No, I do fly. I've got an American flag. I fly, and I fly the Minnesota flag, the Minnesota state flag.
Well, okay, let's say you just all of a sudden one day brought the flagpole home and flew them, and you didn't say anything to your wife. Is she going to at least say, I see you've done some gardening?
is that part of a larger structure we're going to be building? Yeah, exactly.
So the concept of a U.S. Supreme Court justice coming home, seeing a flag upside down, and they don't discuss it, and he doesn't say, that might be a problem with my job.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, that's the problem where it's disingenuous to me.
Okay, putting the political side aside, which we shouldn't, because that's kind of the problem here. Thomas and Alito are the two stupid ones, because I'm just going to be blunt. They're the ones that are doing it so blatantly and red-handedly that it's easy to catch them. We don't know what the smarter justices who are like, maybe I shouldn't be just taking RVs off your hands or having you pay off my family members, real estate debts like Thomas did. There's probably things that are going on with all the justices. I'll be blunt, but the fact that you're so blatantly caught that Thomas is getting an RV from a guy who has cases that are directly affecting him in front of the courts, and he never once says, I don't have to recuse myself because the RV was something else. That Alito is here showing support. His family is showing support for January 6th insurrectionists. And apparently his argument is, well, my wife and I never talk. Okay. Yeah. All right. Sure.
Well, that could be.
Yeah. I guarantee they're not talking now.
I mean, it could be two halves of the same house. I don't know. But again, and this is difficult for spouses who want to maximize their careers. And I don't care what gender we're talking about here. But when one of them is involved in a politically sensitive position, the other one has to at least acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the White House. The press secretary is married to a CNN correspondent who took a leave of absence from covering the White House when her wife is the press secretary. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. And so you have to say, my husband's a justice on the Supreme Court, and I really believe in my own personal career, but I'm going to have to decline the opportunity to take this business, or I'm going to have a grudge match I'm going to have to fly the Garfield flag upside down. I don't mean the president. I got to do something because of the whole. How do you have such thin ear with regard to the whole? I'll at least put that out there.
How do you fix this problem? And once again, Jon Stewart went after Menendez in New Jersey and said, you're really stupid at this if you can't figure out how to go into Congress and make a ton of money, under the books. If you didn't see that, that's actually worthwhile watching. But, you clearly have a problem. And once again, I'm not stupid enough to not think that all of the Supreme Court justices are getting some of this kickback. How do you solve this problem without basically, I guess, putting another, 9 justices or 10 justices on the Supreme Court and basically, then having a 1-vote rule to change it? I just don't know how in the world you would ever fix this.
Well, that's the problem. You really can't fix it because even those who come to the court clean, if you will,
yeah,
it's the lifetime appointment thing. I mean, where's the removal? Where is the mechanism?
You can remove them. You can impeach them and they can be removed. But, it is a process. Yes, there's a process to do it. Yeah.
But as opposed to a term limit, opposed to, see, that's the thing. When they at AM 950 and the good folks in Chicago said, you have a job for life. You've been hell to live with ever since.
Cicada life, but
with the same squawking noise that makes
it makes you appreciate the cicadas. It is. This is the problem. You can't have a Supreme Court that nobody trusts to give legitimate rulings anymore because, you rule one way. That's a brand new RV.
Well, any court. And that's the whole foundation of our system is that the one branch that was supposed to be apolitical.
Yes.
Oops. Problem.
And like I said, I just don't, I think you're going to have to. Have we ever had? I think we have had Supreme Court justices kicked off the Supreme Court, correct? I think they have been. We have to go. I thought there was 1 or 2 that were post-Civil War, that were pre-Civil War appointees that were like, okay, it's time for you to go now. I think that they did actually 1 or 2.
Well, that's your homework.
I will look up and find that. Jeff Stein, once again, find his books at your favorite book retailer, and as well the Iowa Politics Report we will post a little bit later on. Jeff, thank you very much. Talk to you next week. Chicago, have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Wednesday. Matt and Brett here today. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Brett, they got a win last night. And I once again I'm glad they did get a win. I didn't really think they had a chance in them, but they Cat started playing well, and they played well, and they got a win in Dallas. To give you an idea, though, did you see any of the comments from the Dallas Mavericks players and coaches afterwards?
I got a pretty good vibe for it, though, knowing Doncic, that he thinks very highly of himself and his team, and not so much of the Wolves.
Well, no, basically it was the attitude. The audio cuts were basically the Washington Generals beat the Harlem Globetrotters. How is this even possible? Sort of thing. And this is what happens when. Okay, it's never happened. Never in the history of the NBA has a team been down 3-0 and won the series. It's never happened. I want to see it happen just to watch that guy pout and storm off the court. But at the same time, I'm not foolish enough. That's a big ask. They might get the win tomorrow night in Minnesota. But then you've got to go down on Saturday and win in Dallas again before you can get the chance to try to win the series at home on, I guess it'd be Monday, to then turn around to the buzzsaw that's the Boston Celtics. But I just do not see that happening, because that is just too much of heavy lifting at this point. But at the same time, I would love to see them do it, just because to watch him storm off the court.
Yeah, it would be fun to see. I would say a little difference between the Timberwolves being down 3-0 and other teams is that I think the Timberwolves are probably the better team than Dallas. They just have not played that well this series, and they started to look like it last night. So we'll see what happens.
It is, I will say this. It is pretty funny to watch Luka get the calls that he gets.
Oh, yeah.
And basically the amount of times that and now I'm seeing that the NBA, it almost looks like do the refs in the NBA have money on Dallas at this point? Because the amount of times he's blatantly fouling other people and they're not calling anything is pretty amazing. It's not even close.
Yeah, he is one of the biggest whiners in the league in terms of whenever there's a call, he is going to complain on absolutely everything. Yes.
Is if their center, the center that went out with a neck injury, and once again, I'm not turning this into basketball talk, but if the center that has the neck injury, if he doesn't come back, they've got a big problem. The Mavericks have a big problem, don't they?
Yeah, they need him back, and I think they're exposing too. The Mavericks are not a good team defensively with Doncic and the other guard. I'm thinking of Kyrie Irving. So we'll see what happens.
Irving
not to go into sports talk, as you said. But
Irving has done a very good job of shutting down Ant, but there's a big difference between doing that in a few games and doing it in 7. And Ant is, last night
Ant was tired too. Yeah,
Ant is starting to look like he's figuring out how to get around Irving.
Yeah,
and if that's the case, then it's going to be a much more difficult thing. But like I said, I'm dead serious when it says. I know people out there, the optimism is fantastic. It's never happened. A team has never come back from being down 0-3 and won a series in the NBA. Not once. Not once. In the NHL, it's only happened like 4 times. So
baseball only once, and we know that example. That's
the
Red Sox.
The Red Sox Yankees.
That's the only time. Yeah, it never happens in sports.
Yeah. I've talked before on a different subject here. I've talked before about. All right, I want to get personal, but I'm not going to get I don't want to give out too much information. I have talked about the fact that we definitely need to fix our schools. The school systems had a way too aggressive tone to the African-American student population. Absolutely. Undeniably. And we needed to find a solution for that. But what I have said from the beginning is the solution to that is not to go the complete opposite route and have no consequences for violence in schools and bad behavior in schools. My kid's school, there was a student who was attacked, and the school basically took the sides of the attackers because they wanted that story of the diamond in the rough. And so they basically re-victimized the victim to make sure that the victim's attackers got a chance to graduate with the rest of the class, even though they should never have been allowed to do that. It makes you kind of scratch your head a little bit about what's the whole goal here, because if all you're doing is re-victimizing the victims, aren't you then doing the same service to that the bad behavior is? You're just basically enforcing the bad behavior. I get, hauling kids out of schools in cuffs if it's just there's a disturbance and stuff like this. Yeah, I get it. You don't want to necessarily have that. And there was way too aggressive of a tone towards minority students that definitely needed to be approached. But getting rid of discipline and saying, we're going to have a pancake breakfast. We're going to have a thought circle, and we'll all share our feelings. Thinking that this is going to succeed. My kid's school, yesterday I got a notification. Apparently there were 3 fights in the school. 3 in one day. All right, that doesn't seem to be working. Today, I just got this. Out of an abundance of cautions, we're canceling the Culture Night celebration we scheduled for tonight. We became aware of many rumors regarding planned violence at the event this morning. Throughout the day, we started to hear of increased reports from multiple sources regarding this event. Although we had already planned for the police to be present at this event, weeks ago we believed it's the best interest to safely our community to cancel the event. Well, good going. How's that pancake breakfast thing? Maybe that's what you need. Just get them all together for a pancake breakfast, because that's going to solve the whole problem. The solution to a heavy-handed approach, and I've talked about this with Mary Moriarty and her sentencing guidelines. You do not, granted, once again, and I'll say this, and we've been very clear about this, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, the Minneapolis Police Department, there's been a heavy-handed nature to them that has been very much victimizing the black and minority population of this city. Undeniably. But going back and giving people who murder somebody, home detainment so they can get Netflix and DoorDash and acting like that's a punishment? Come on. The solution for a heavy-handed, problematic system is not a non-existent, punishment system. Because guess what? If they know they're not going to get in trouble, there's nothing stopping them from doing what they're going to do. Heck, they like pancakes. They're going to get more pancake breakfasts. Great. All I need to do is attack someone in school and pancakes ahoy. Woohoo! Yeah, it's failing. And it's not every school, but you can't have a situation where you basically have non-existent punishment policies. And can I just say, the one thing that just blows my mind about schools today, we just went through the pandemic, and the argument was, sure, when you were ramping it up, it was a little rough, but you got to a point where remote learning became an option, which you insisted, the schools of the state insisted, and the schools across the country insisted could be done as well as in-person education. Fine. You want to make sure someone gets an education, that's fine. If they're a fighting problem, they don't get to show up to school. They don't get to show up to school. They get to go, they stay home, and they can learn from home for the safety of everyone. You're not punishing them. Heck, you're not even kicking them out of school. It just is, they got a different classroom. I mean, if that is not a decent solution because we want to give them the experience, you can't get out of your own damn way at this point. If that's the case, you can't. I mean, if you're so focused on the diamond in the rough story and you're not realizing the damage that you're doing to victims, to the safety of the school, the security stance that you put forward, then I don't know what to do. I can't help you. I can't help you. It just is, once again, there are a lot of people who are working on these things, and guess what? They've just been told that all that work they did, it was for nothing. All their families that were going to come on out and do it was for nothing because, 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. I've got another good story about Minneapolis-St. Paul. A new study places both Minneapolis and St. Paul in the top 50 best U.S. cities to raise families. I know. Prepare yourself for Republicans screaming, it's a hellscape, abandoned war zone full of zombies. And if it is, man, I got to tell you, it's got great pizza downtown. You ever been to Rectangle, man? Rectangle's a solid pizza, man.
I have not, no, but
we got to go down there. North Loop, man. That's a fantastic place. Every time I go downtown, so I know it was open doors, but I was stunned at how packed downtown was. The middle of the day, that weekend, there was no T-Wolves game. There was no Twins game that day. They were out of town. It was packed downtown. One of the things that I find to be funny about people that constantly rip on Minneapolis-St. Paul is that the mentality is that since things are not the same way that they were in 1975 on Nicollet Mall and in the Skyways, that somehow, some way, the city is abandoned and failing. I want to remind people of what downtown Minneapolis was like in 1975. Heck, I'll give you 1984 when I was going down there. It was a pit, okay? Hennepin Avenue was the Nanking, the Skyway, a ton of adult bookstores, a few saunas, and a lot of abandoned buildings. That was Hennepin. There was people in some of the buildings, but there was a lot of empty buildings downtown. No one was over in the warehouse district. I want to repeat that. No one. I remember when they built Butler Square, and they were like, "You guys are crazy. No one wants to be over here." And that was the first building that went in over there. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't build fast enough over there, especially when Target Center went in. Then they booted. I mean, we did Art Whirl, and all the artists are up in the northeast side of town. Why are they in the northeast side of town? Because they all used to be in the North Loop, but because when they started developing that area, they all got booted out, and they went up to the northeast, and now that area is becoming crazy popular again now, too. Downtown Minneapolis in the 1970s, early 1980s was Nicollet Mall, and that was it. That was it. Sure, Macy's was fantastic. They used to have those big windows and lots of great stores. There was a lot of good stores, and people would come downtown and park, and they'd go hike, and they'd go through the stores, and it was good fun. But that didn't happen. Those stores closing didn't happen because Minneapolis is bad. It's because the retail market changed. And they got wiped out by Amazon. And if you're looking to save costs, one of the most expensive rental properties is probably not the place you want to keep your business open. But to give Macy's credit, Dayton's and then Marshall Field's and Macy's, they basically did stay open for as long as they could in downtown Minneapolis. I got bad news. If you're upset about where Nicollet Mall is, I got bad news for you. Donaldson's closed about 20 years ago, too. 25 years ago. Donaldson's is gone. Sorry. The Woolworths is no longer there. I know. It's going to break your heart. A big shocker. There is no Woolworths left down on Nicollet Mall. And, yeah, things change. But doesn't mean there aren't people down there. I was down downtown when my son graduated. Went down and got Manny's. Fantastic. Place was packed. A lot of people down there. A lot of people all over the downtown. But if you are trying your hardest to have the myopic view that unless all the stores that were open in 1979 on Nicollet Mall are still open and thriving, then the downtown's a failure, without ignoring the Guthrie and the Washington Avenue, where now what used to be a bunch of empty parking lots is now residence after residence after residence all full. Across the river by Kermanchik's and Qualls and Surdyk's and stuff, packed. They can't build buildings fast enough over there. The North Loop, pretty much everywhere around the downtown. It's busy. And it's very livable. Wallet Hub ranked 182 cities. based on 45 metrics. Minneapolis placed 42nd, St. Paul 46. So 182, definitely on the top side of it. As a matter of fact, basically both of them in the top one quarter, 25% of the cities. So there you go. Well, both cities sit in the top 50. Only Minneapolis achieved a top 10 score in any category, ranking third in affordability. St. Paul sat at 13th in the same category. Topping the list was Fremont, California, largely based on the high scores in economic categories, followed by the top 5, Overland Park, Kansas, Irvine, California, Plano, Texas, and Seattle, Washington. But once again, Minneapolis, St. Paul ranked in the top 50 of most livable cities. This basically, in a similar ranking, Livability published its list of best cities, places to live among small and mid-sized cities. Minnesota has a quartet of cities, including Rochester, Duluth, St. Paul, and Bloomington. And then, of course, this comes on the heels of the park survey, right? Yeah, they're ranked. They list of the cities with best parks. Minneapolis ranked second in the nation. St. Paul just one spot behind. Washington, D.C. was number 1. Lots of good reasons, lots of positive things going on here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And God, I love living in this town. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Let's take a break. Come on back. I want to try to play the video of the hamburger filibuster from the Minnesota House if we can. We'll do that when we come back. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950. So during, of course, one of the reasons why things kind of got stalled out. Well, there's a few different reasons. That the one Democratic senator that basically held the rest of the Senate hostage until the Uber Lyft deal got done. By the way, Senator, with all due respect, you should be championing the freaking ERA bill the minute you get back. You got your stunts, you got your bill passed, but at a huge cost. That ERA bill is the first bill you guys get passed when you get back in session next January with the majority. Okay, because if that failed because of this, I'm not going to be happy with you, Senator. With all due respect. There were some reasons why things stalled out, but there was a main reason why things got stalled out, and that was because the Republicans were insisting on filibustering as much as they could. Now, once again, when Melissa Hortman cut off the debate on one time, they acted, how dare you stop us from talking about this important issue? And Representative Paul Torkelson, the Torque Master, Torkelson basically came on out. You're going to hear him on the beginning of this video, basically saying that people are going to say that we tried to filibuster. That's not true. What comes after this is over 2 minutes of what the House DFL has labeled the filiburger, because all it is Republicans talking about they're supposed to be debating the issues. This is what they insisted they needed to keep talking about, and when they got shut down after hours and hours of talking about this, here it is, the video for you of the filiburger.
You're going to hear the Democrats come in here and try to blame us for the way this session ended. They're going to say, oh, they filibustered. Well, the truth is we didn't filibuster.
Whether it's a eighth ounce, a quarter pounder, it's a half pounder, it's a third pounder. A burger just isn't a burger like this anymore, folks.
I like a McDonald's hamburger once in a while, but Wendy's every so often is good.
McDonald's, Burger King.
You've got Burger King, and I like the Junior Whopper, so that's my choice.
Hardee's, one of my childhood favorites.
Culver's is my wife's favorite. It's right on our way home from the cities here. That's her hamburger place of choice.
The burger has been brought up a number of times.
Wendy's, Arby's,
Chili's, Applebee's. Our Princeton Golf Course does a nice job.
Burgers and everything in between. I kind of perked up a little bit earlier with the discussion of hamburgers.
Mind you, there's no hamburger bill out there.
Particularly cheeseburgers.
Wild Buffalo Wings doesn't do a bad job. You got our old Dairy Queen. Fantastic. They got all the other stuff that comes with it as well.
I was known as the cheeseburger champion for Minnesota.
Wow.
Frontier Steakhouse, which doesn't exist anymore, had wonderful burgers. White Castle,
yeah, that's
just
why they're
down
closed.
The street here. famous for their burgers as well. Mr. Moe's is a favorite of the people around here. I mention all those things because, one, it's getting close to supper time.
So yeah, we've talked a lot about burgers and other stuff.
Hamburger.
The hamburger.
Our hamburger.
Like our burger, the burger,
Hamburger.
burgers and
Hamburger. Or hamburger. Burger night. A hamburger.
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 burgers and have a burger.
Hamburger.
Hamburger.
Or burger. Hamburgers.
Now, hamburgers, we always think about is just the patty, but the patty you can add on lettuce, you can add on ketchup,
Really, SpongeBob.
mustard, barbecue sauce.
A burger. The hamburger.
Burger joint.
A hamburger. A hamburger.
Onions, onion rings, deep fried onion rings. They're putting eggs on them now. Burger. Burger for a burger that I bacon. I can't get by without mentioning bacon. But hamburgers are not only good for hamburgers.
Hamburger. Hamburger and hamburger.
Hamburger. It's burger. A burger the burger. That's
The hamburger.
from hamburgers.
Hamburger that, would...
The cheeseburgers at McDonald's.
Hamburger can be used in tacos. My wife has tacos on Wednesday. That's her day.
Burgers. Obviously, that's been talked to death tonight. Delicious subject, but talked to death.
Hamburgers. Well, we talked enough about hamburgers. Hot dogs.
There you go. Now, first of all, let's make sure we understand this. These guys don't know a good hamburger to save their ass. Okay. Okay, Gordy's in Cloquet, man. Convention Grill, Park Tavern's got a great hamburger. What do you do? There are about 18 places in town that are not Arby's. Did he say Arby's? They don't even serve a hamburger at Arby's.
Arby's and Wendy's made some guest appearances. You're right. Yeah, Arby's doesn't do burgers, do they? Yeah,
No, they
you got the
don't.
beef and cheddars. That's not a burger.
You guys, I know you're really, really, really white on the Republican side, but yeah, that's too white, okay? Oh, boy, gosh, I got a McDonald's hamburger. Oh, boy. Fine. Nothing against you, McDonald's. You serve a purpose. But I'm afraid to take a Republican to a good burger joint. Watch their head explode, man. Oh, the one place that had really good hamburgers that's now closed. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Sure, there. All right, so A, these guys clearly have no taste. B, you're trying to argue you didn't filibuster. That's 3 minutes of just the highlights of your entire burger discussion because you were filibustering. Don't act like you guys, this was by design. And Republicans, although you didn't stop everything, you stopped some things. You should be talking about the day that we championed the hamburger and you slowed things down. Instead, you think we're all dumb and you say, we didn't filibuster. And just on the hamburger alone, and that's just in the House, you guys wasted hours of time. And when the speaker basically cut you off, how dare you? I was just getting to the toppings. Come on. You guys, this, if anything, why would you put these people in power if they're not part of the solution? Now, the reason I'm playing this is because I wanted to touch a little bit on what Cooligan talked with Brett about yesterday. And you can hear that audio, that interview that we did. That is available on the StreamYard, or not the StreamYard, on the SoundCloud and the iTunes, and you can go listen to that. And it was about this bringing in the filibuster. On the House DFL side, researchers put together a video of the Republicans wasting a lot of everyone's time talking about cheeseburgers based on the fast cut. And this is Cooligan and I agreeing on this. Based on the video, they mostly have terrible taste in burgers. Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy, a St. Paul Democrat who once held the same role in the House, said Democrats in the upper chamber are strongly considering time limits in debates next year, which is common across the country and the U.S. House. Although current rules allow for the majority to end debate with a parliamentary maneuver known as removing the previous question, House Speaker Melissa Hortman calls it the nuclear option, and it's rarely wielded. Murphy called Republican behavior extraordinarily filibustering outside the norms of the legislature, which we just proved through the burger video, just alone. Interestingly, she seems to be telling the press before the potential rule change before she informed Senate Minority Leader Eric Johnson. but they're not having good relationships. Johnson called the change in the filibustering ridiculous, pointing to the Democrats' inability to manage the legislative calendar. She called Murphy's management of the session hyper-partisan and said that it was the real cause of the slowdown. Murphy alleged that Jordan refused to negotiate on anything, and this is something I have heard from multiple people, that the Democrats consistently were going to the Republicans and saying, let's sit down and discuss this, and what were the Republicans doing? Burger! Actually, they didn't even say burger. They threw a temper tantrum and ran out, and then they said, we're going to talk about hamburgers today. In every conversation, this is Aaron Murphy talking about Johnson, and every conversation I had, the goal I kept hearing was, let's go home. Johnson told me that the minority told me if the minority can't use the parliamentary tactics, we have more of a winner-take-all environment with majorities able to pass the agenda without input from the minority. Yeah. And, okay, I want to stop right there, because what Johnson is trying to make it seem like is, when we're in charge, we allow the Democrats to have a say. Bull, I can't say the rest of that. Bull crud. The same Republican Party that put a mute button in, the same Republican Party that never had conference committee hearings, the same Republican Party that threw a 1,000-page bill at Democrats and said you got 10 minutes to vote, and they'd never seen any part of that bill. The same Republican Party who's acting as if there's a long-standing tradition that the minority party can upend the majority party. Okay, Republicans, let me make sure you understand this. You lost because the majority of the state thinks you suck, okay? And you might not like that, but it's the truth. The state put the Democrats in charge during your red tsunami year. You guys lost. And this demand that this because they won the popular vote and now have control, why can't we be in charge? Because you suck. Because what you think is leadership and important is freaking talking about hamburgers, and not good hamburgers either. Crappy hamburgers. And you sit there and you smile and you giggle, and finally the speaker says enough's enough. And you're like, how dare you? I didn't get to the breakfast sandwich options on the fast food menu. Democracy is failing. Hey, Torkelson, shut up, man. Or do you have a burger story you want to share too? There was one time, I'm Representative Torkelson. There was one time I was in a White Castle and there was a slider, and boy, it was sure tasty. You want to deal with the crises of rural hospitals closing? No. Do you want to deal with the problem of closing schools in rural Minnesota? No, not at all. No. You want to deal with the improvement of infrastructure in rural America? Nope, never. No. What do you want to do? We're going to talk about hamburgers. The reason why you're not in charge is because you're children. And you're pathetic children who constantly want to redo because we didn't lose. We need to put us in power. The same political party who, when they were in charge, said there to sit down and shut up to all the Democrats because we're in charge. The same Republican Party who, when they had a party during COVID and likely killed one of their own senators because of said party, and had multiple senators with COVID in the Senate, did not tell the DFL, oh, by the way, we're a walking freaking petri dish. And there's Royce White. And so, you guys aren't serious. But sure, tell us more about where the burger touched you. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Wednesday. By the way, just a quick little side note there. Thanks to the guys at the Reformer that put that together and told about that story, and of course the Minnesota DFL that did it. There's a lot of journalists who sat there and heard them talk about the Burgers Forever, and yet I don't hear of any journalists that called out the Republican filibustering outside of the Reformer. Hey, you quickly put out there, we didn't filibuster anything narrative. I know you guys did. I know you news journalists went out there and you went with what the Republican talking points were. But you guys were there when they did this, and at no point did your journalistic integrity creep up the old spine and say, hey, wait a second here. What was that all about burgers for the last 7 hours? That sure seemed like a filibuster. Nope, that was an important conversation, Matt. Don't just because you don't like what happened to the Democrats, don't blame me. Oh no, I'm going to blame you because if you're going to fall down and not do your job so blatantly, God, I mean, dear Lord, that's not me. That's just pointing out reality you sat through. I mean, I love a good podcast too, but maybe you should have paid attention to what was going on the floor. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Yeah, but it's just me. It's just me, yeah. I got to bring this story up because this is disturbing. And once again, I appreciate good journalism when this is. And this is a story that came on out today in regards to the truth at 3M and the story of the Forever Chemical stuff. Chris Hansen had worked as a chemist at the 3M Corporation for about a year when her boss, an affable senior scientist named Jim Johnson, gave her a strange assignment. 3M had invented Scotch tape and Post-it notes and sold everything from sandpaper to kitchen sponges. But on this day in 1997, Johnson wanted Hansen to test human blood for chemical contamination. Several of 3M's most successful products contain man-made compounds called fluorochemicals. In a spray called Scotch Guard, fluorochemicals protected leather and fabric from stains. In a coating known as Scotch Band, they prevented food packaging from getting soggy. And in a soapy foam used by firefighters, they helped extinguish jet fuel fires. Johnson explained to Hansen that one of the company's fluorochemicals, PFOs, short for, I'm not going to even try, PFOs, often found its way into the bodies of 3M factory workers. Although he said that they were unharmed, he had recently hired an outside lab to measure the levels in their blood. The lab had just reported something odd, however. For the sake of comparison, it had tested blood samples from the American Red Cross, which came from a general population and should have been free of fluorochemicals. Instead, it kept finding the contamination in all the blood samples, including the ones from the Red Cross. Johnson asked Hansen to figure out whether the lab had made a mistake. So basically once again, they had 3M, they had their own techs basically getting these fluorochemicals. They sent this out for an outside lab to have them test it. And the outside lab tested it against just random samples they got from the Red Cross. And funny story, all the samples had the PFOs in them. Johnson asked Hansen to figure out whether the lab had made a mistake. Detecting trace levels of chemicals was her specialty. She had recently written a doctoral dissertation about tiny particles in the atmosphere. Hansen's team of lab techs and junior scientists fetched a blood sample from the lab supply company and prepped it for analysis. Then Hansen switched on an oven-sized box known as a mass spectrometer, which weighs molecules so that the scientists can identify them. As the lab equipment hummed around her, Hansen loaded a sample into the machine. The graph appeared on the mass spectrometer's display. It suggested there was a compound in the blood that could be PFOs. That's weird, Hansen thought. Why would a chemical produced by 3M show up in people who had never worked for the company? Hansen didn't want to share her results until she was certain they were correct, so she and her team spent several weeks analyzing more blood, often in time-consuming overnight tests. And all the samples appeared to be contaminated. When Hansen used a more precise method, liquid chromatography, the results left little doubt that the chemical in the Red Cross blood was indeed PFOs. Now, by the way, I want to make sure we mention something here. This is one of the first stories I've read which talks more about what the PFOs were used for. because the one thing that they said was, and now I'm realizing, okay, they talked about the firefighter foam. And that was always the ones like, okay, this is where this seems to be coming from. The thing which was crazy about that, I said, was like, how much of this foam are you using? Because that seems like a lot. The reason why they admitted to that is, it seems to me at least, I mean, this is just pure speculation, is that, well, that use has a noble, righteous cause. It's not just for consumerism. We are putting out fires. But now you find out, well, this was something that we're using to coat food product packaging. And that is where most of it, my guess is most of this came from. The leather stuff, the stuff they put on the leather products, sure, some people probably got that. I mean, the old Mad Hatter's disease. I mean, the people that worked with leather that basically were making hats, they would use arsenic and it would drive them crazy. That's called Mad Hatter's disease. And that was the case. I mean, there's always been some of that stuff that leaches off leather and hides and stuff like that. That's always happened. But I don't think that that's, you're going to get most people don't wear leather, most people don't wear leather or hides of some sort. So it's got to be the food packaging is where most of this came from. And this is kind of one of the first times I've ever seen, oh yeah, this is where it was. Hansen has now felt obligated to update her boss. Johnson was a towering bearded man who liked, and she liked him. He seemed to trust her expertise and found something to laugh about in the most conversations. But when she shared her findings, his response was cryptic. This changes everything, he said. And before she could ask him what she meant, he went to his office and closed the door. Hansen stayed near Johnson's office for the rest of the day, anxiously waiting for him to react to his research. He never did. In the days that followed, Hansen sensed that Johnson had notified some of his superiors. She remembers his boss, Dale Bacon, a paunchy fellow with gray hair, stopping by her desk and suggesting that she had made a mistake. I don't think so, she told him. In subsequent weeks, Hansen and her team ordered fresh blood samples from every supplier that 3M worked with. Each of the samples tested positive for PFOs. What Hansen didn't know was that 3M had already conducted animal studies 2 decades earlier. They had shown the PFOs to be toxic. This is in the 70s. 3M knew this stuff was out there, and it was dangerous. Yet the results remain secret even to many of the company. In one early experiment, clearly, and by the way, I'm going to say, clearly they weren't sharing this with the company. Johnson clearly went to Hansen and said, hey, I want you to test this, basically because he was trying to figure out, why in the world is this outside lab getting this? So I'm going to go in-house here. This will solve this problem. And it was only then that he realized, oh, this has been going on for a while. Yet the results remain secret even to many in the company. In one early experiment conducted in the late 70s, a group of 3M scientists fed PFOs to rats on a daily basis. Starting in the second lowest dose that the scientists tested, about 10 milligrams for every kilogram of body weight, the rats showed signs of possible harm to their livers, and half of them did die. At higher doses, every rat died. Soon afterwards, 3M scientists found that the relatively low dose, 4.5 milligrams for every kilogram of body weight, could kill a monkey within weeks. Based on this result, the chemical would currently fall into the highest of 5 toxicity levels recognized by the United Nations. It's hometown company here, guys. This daily dose of PFOs was orders of magnitude greater than the amount that the average person would ingest, but it was still relatively low, roughly comparable to the dose of aspirin in a standard tablet. In 1979, an internal company report deemed PFOs certainly more toxic than anticipated and recommended longer-term studies. That year, 3M executives flew to San Francisco to consult with Harold Hodge, a respected toxologist. They told Hodge only part of what they knew, that PFOs had sickened and even killed laboratory animals and had caused liver abnormalities in factory workers. According to 3M, documented that they marked confidential. So they knew about this, and they still are labeling confidential. Hodge urged the executives to study whether the company's fluorochemicals cause reproductive issues or cancer. After reviewing more data, he told one of them to find out whether the chemicals were present in man, and he added, If the levels are high and widespread and the half-life is long, we could have a serious problem. So this is back in the 70s. In the 1970s, they went out to this expert, and he immediately said, you should see if this stuff is out there everywhere right now. If the levels were high and widespread and the half-life is long, we could have a serious problem. Yet Hodge's warning was omitted from the official meeting notes. The company's fluorochemical production increased over time. Hansen's bosses never told her that PFOs were toxic. In the weeks after Johnson left 3M, however, she felt that she was under a new level of scrutiny. One of her superiors suggested that her equipment might be contaminated, so she cleaned the mass spectrometer and then the entire lab. Her results did not change. Another encouraged her to repeatedly analyze her syringes, bags, and test tubes in case they had tainted for blood. Now, I want to remind you, they knew the PFOs were everywhere, and yet they still were harassing Hansen. At this point, I'm presuming to get Hansen to come along and be a team player and say, oh, yeah, it was just contamination. Even though it was clear at this point, it sounds like she had done dozens of tests, and it wasn't anything but the truth that these forever chemicals were out there. Let's take a break. Come on back. I'll get more into this when we do return. 952-946-6205. It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Wednesday.
Let's have some fun. This beat is sick. I want to take a ride on your disco stick. Dance with my baby.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's Matt McNeil. So basically, Hansen's just working there at 3M. Her boss comes in and says, hey, we had this extra lab come on out, and they give us some weird samples and results. Can you take a look at it yourself? Sure, does it. Immediately comes out, finds out these forever chemicals are not only something that's bothering people that work at the company, but it's everywhere now. So basically, her manager retires. Johnson leaves. The rest of the company seems to vilify her, even though the company was aware 20 years earlier there was a serious toxicity problem with the PFOs. 20 years earlier. And here she is. She just stumbles on this, and they basically come after her. One of her supervisors suggested their equipment was contaminated. She cleaned it mass spectrometer. Her managers were less concerned about PFOs. They seemed Hansen, and they chanced that she was wrong. This is a pretty damning story from Publica, and I'll post it out there. I'm a business major from William Penn, and one of the things you have to take is a business ethics class. And they come up with this question, and there's a variation of this question in a lot of these business schools. And the one is, you work for a food company, you discover an additive that is, you do not have to report to the federal government, and it's flavorless, but it makes your product addictive. Do you use it? And the question is that, would you basically make your own product addictive, knowing that it would make your product much more popular, but at the same time, you would be creating addicts to your product? Now, this used to be an interesting discussion, and if you ever talk to a business ethics professor, they would always tell you, back in the 70s, most people were like, oh, of course not, you wouldn't use this. Today, I mean, freaking the opiates, they knew they were basically selling heroin light as painkiller to all these people. And as opposed to saying, boy, maybe there's an ethics problem here, they recruited thousands of salespeople to put it into doctors' hands, telling them it was perfectly safe, to create a nationwide group of addicts. Of course, there isn't any ethics in this. 3M seems to have known decades earlier there's a real big freaking problem with the PFOs. And once again, their own testing said this would make this one of the most dangerous chemicals on the planet. And yet they didn't stop. And they kept going. And where are the consequences? Where are the consequences? Where are these people being let out of this building in cuffs? Because we're talking liver damage. We're talking people who have died. We are talking, all of us have these forever chemicals in our system now. All of us do. They have found them from pole to pole. Not because a few firefighters use this, but because they sprayed it in all our food packaging. And that's how we got it. And they didn't do their due diligence beforehand to say, maybe we should see if this is toxic. Oh, it is? Well, probably we shouldn't put it on food packaging. Sounds like they were putting it on food packaging. It's like, hey, by the way, maybe we should see if this is toxic after the fact. Oh, it is? Shh. 3M is an iconic Minnesota company. But if they actually did this, and I don't want it, 3M, with all due respect, all right, with your legacy and all this, shut up. I don't want to hear your, well, what's water under the bridge now? We're looking for solutions now. We don't want to focus on the blame game. You don't want to focus on the blame game, you jackasses, because you're to blame for poisoning us all. I don't think a slap on the wrist or a, well, that's how business works, is good enough. How many people have died because of this? Of course, no one's going to hold them accountable. In this country, please. Being wealthy is the most important thing, Matt. You can kill millions of people. We don't care. And that's the Sackler family. I'll post the story. You read through this thing. It scares the living daylights out of you. What we mean to these corporations. We mean nothing. Native Roots Radio is up next. We're back tomorrow. Have a good one. Till then, see ya.